Welcome back to Moonbath Chats. Let's get into the spoilers for Agatha All Along, episode 6. Actually, it was Billy all along. Familiar by thy side is the episode's title. Billy being the familiar to Agatha, but also the title is like referencing the family, like Billy's family, because Billy's family is going to be by his side at his bar mitzvah. Because it's a flashback episode, we're getting into William Kaplan. You know, what led the teen to go and find Agatha and get to the Witch's Road. And so this is when he was, 13, because at 13 is when you have your bar mitzvah. It's actually a magic mitzvah, because William here is a big fan of magic. As we see later on when we go into his room, he has all this fantasy and magic posters. Definitely a good candidate for Billy to reincarnate into his body. But one thing I want to point out here, the aspect ratio. We're getting back into the aspect ratio theorizing. This is a brand new aspect ratio. It's more of a 16 by 10 versus 16 by 9. So you can see the black bars on each side of the screen here on the right and left, as opposed to top and bottom. So what's the deal? So I suspect that there's different aspect ratios depending on who the protagonist, the main character of a particular scene is. We start the series with Agatha kind of acting as the main protagonist, so we're using that cinematic, really wide aspect ratio in those first episodes, along with when we're on the Witch's Road, we're really following Agatha as she's trying to get to the end of the road. It's her story, it's her show, right? But then when we go into the trials for specific characters, it changes. Alice's as well as Jen's trials, they were in a more fuller screen 16 by 9 aspect ratio. But then when we go to Agatha's trial, that was still in the widescreen, cinematic widescreen ratio, indicating that, she was the main character of that scene. I feel like that's what the show's trying to convey here, that certain characters, important characters, have their own point of view, right? Literally their own framing, their own particular framing of the world, how they see the world within the television frame. So Billy has that taller aspect ratio. I think that there is some importance to it, because or else why would they even have this strange aspect ratio, which you really don't even ever see some Wes Anderson movies or something have like an aspect ratio like this. And then maybe because Billy is like the youngest of the witches, right? He gets the more squished ratio. Could also represent power, but I don't know. I'm sure at the end of the series we'll have a better idea what this aspect ratio change could mean. Back to William here. This is a great little setup here. I also just like the filmmaking choice here. Like the transitions here are really nice, from his mitzvah to the party afterward. That's a great transition there. But we get a view of how he connects with his family and his friends. His bar mitzvah is themed with magic, including a fortune teller. And guess who it is? It's Lilia. She's gonna see that there's trouble in his future. This time she names the Tower card, particularly the Tower reverse. Now the Tower in the tarot cards represents destruction or disaster, but when it's reversed, it means that it's a disaster that someone maybe narrowly missed. So that seems to mean that okay, she's kind of seeing the future here, where the teen is gonna be in a car accident later on. We'll see, right? There's a disaster that happens, but it's averted because the teen comes back to life with the soul of Billy. And we'll get to that. I think that's what the Tower is referencing. It could be referencing something else in the future. It could be referencing some other disaster coming, but within the confines of this episode, that's what I think it indicates. And then we get a revealing moment here. I did not see this coming. I don't think anyone really that I know of predicted that it was in fact Lilia who put the sigil on the team. I feel like she sees something in her head. She's like, oh, I gotta do something. You know, she's thinking in her head, I gotta protect this kid. She probably sees something to do with him at the Witch's Road. So in order for him to get there, she needs to put a sigil on him so when he meets Agatha can take him to the Witch's Road. But if he were to reveal his identity, then Agatha wouldn't take him to the Witch's Road. You know, Agatha would reject him because Agatha hates Wanda. You know, if she knew that Billy was Billy, she probably wouldn't have him tag along. And this squiggle here, like, it's pretty mysterious. You know, I thought when we first saw the sigil on Billy's mouth, it seemed like an M or a W. You know, could it be like, you know, Wanda Maximoff is what, you know, I was thinking. A lot of people were thinking. I know that on the tower card, there is like the lightning bolt that strikes the tower kind of has like an MW shape. And then there's also an unusual squiggle bottom corner of the tower card. Is it related to runes? You know, rune magic was a big thing in WandaVision, and Billy references that, you know, runes are used in witchcraft. And maybe in Lilia's upcoming trial, I imagine we'll have an episode focused on Lilia. We'll uncover what this actually means. Agatha said that how the sigil magic works is that the witch that casts the sigil, it also applies to herself. So she immediately forgets who the sigil was for, and so she just asks some attendant here to deliver the jacket to whoever left it behind. This is taking place in Eastview, you know, and they're getting an alert here that the anomaly from Westview is going awry. So people are aware that there's something going on in Westview. Okay, so this is a moment where at the end of WandaVision, where the hex starts getting smaller, because Wanda is pretty much getting rid of the hex, right? You know, she's releasing all the people held captive, and she's saying goodbye to Vision and her kids. On the radio, we actually get some dialogue from WandaVision, jumbles of TV signals from the hex that are reaching this radio out of sync, out of time, you know? As the hex is contracting, you know, it's probably sending all these signals out, you know, from the past. And so, you know, he finds a sigil here, doesn't quite know what it is, of course. They're distracted by the hex, the radio, all that, and they get into a car accident that it seems like they're going back into Eastview, or maybe they were in Southview or something, and they're going back to Eastview. Here we actually see the hex get smaller as it starts receding, yeah. Wanda had part of the soul stone in her, right? She is able to create life. That's why she was able to create her kids in Vision. So her kids had a soul. The moment the hex was dispelled, the idea is that the souls of those kids shot out and sought a body to inhabit. In the case of Billy, he gravitates towards William, who at this very moment just died. You know, it's pretty brutal scene. Like, that is pretty gruesome for a Disney show, right? This seems to be the exact moment that Billy and Tommy say goodnight to each other. You know, he's screaming Tommy because that's the last thing he saw. That's the last person he saw before he got reincarnated here. We get Alice here in a cameo as the cop at the scene. Of course, we knew that she was an ex-cop, you know, before she was a security guard. He's at the hospital now that does say Eastview General Hospital. They suspect that he has amnesia, you know, because he hit his head bad, and he's acting all different, you know, because he's actually Billy now, you know. You're in that position, if your kid died, if you had the choice of some other soul being transported in your kid's body, you might just take that offer. Like, yeah, you know, it'd be the substitute, but it'd be better than nothing. Damn. I don't know. It's just a trippy thing to think about. And here's another cool transition here. Already shot here, just like a little peek through the door window here. In WandaVision, we get some hints that Billy can read minds. But here they make it pretty clear that he's a mind reader. You know, and later on, it seems that, like, it just comes and goes. You know, you think that maybe on the Witch's Road, he would have been able to make use of that, but there's never an indication that he did. But maybe he did and we didn't notice, you know, because we're never in his perspective on the Witch's Road. But it seems to me that like he can only sometimes read people's minds. And and like in that last episode, it's like during that angry moment he was able to use his blue powers. So I think part of his character arc is trying to regain that control over his powers. So he goes back to his room, and we do see a bunch of posters from like fantasy and magic related things. We get Houdini, we get, Alice in Wonderland, Wizard of Oz on the side there. Maybe how magic works is that at that moment, like a magnet, Billy's soul was attracted to William, because of that, the interest he had, Basically, he suspects this is just a result of his accident, right? His amnesia, and so he's just trying to convince himself, okay, actually, I'm William Kaplan. That's who I am. I'll get better. And then we go to 3 years later. He's hanging out with his boyfriend. But at this point, he's not completely convinced that he's A-okay and that something is off still. He still feels off. He wants to figure out who he really is. Disney is actually following through. They're actually showcasing some gay romance here, and they're not backing away this time. There's actually some prolonged kissing here, and this in fact may be the gayest Marvel show. That's good to see, and this bodes well for future episodes with Agatha and Rio. It really solidifies the show as a queer show. It's actually meaningful characters with solid story arcs and motivations and all that. He sees that he actually loves him, and he says, "I love you too," and it's funny, it's cute. And now we get into the detective investigator mode. He's got to hide his arms, because Billy's got to focus. He's been watching Jen's skincare videos, again showing that like, yeah, there's some witchy people in a 3-mile radius. So he shows Eddie a video of the dome. He shows that it has runes in it. That's witchcraft, obviously, duh. Also Eddie's like, he says that like he thought it was an Avengers training exercise gone wrong, to which Billy's like, oh, that's so adorable. So adorably trusting. It kind of lets you know that like, oh yeah, most people outside the superhero bubble in this world, they were told that it's just an exercise and don't quite know what exactly happened. Billy's like, oh yeah, there's a guy on Reddit who has some info who was from Westview and actually experienced the anomaly firsthand. So they're gonna meet up with them. And at this point, like, I was like, oh, this has to be Ralph Bohner. This has to be Ralph Bohner. I was kind of waiting, like, oh, are they gonna have a Ralph Bohner cameo in this series? And in fact, they do, because now Ralph Bohner has become like a conspiracy nut, paranoid type of character who's actually right, for the most part, right? He's experienced it, and of course, people aren't believing him. Bohnerrific 69 even. They're going all out with the sex jokes. You can kind of even tell this is Evan Peters from before he even turns around. And there we go. Evan Peters is back. Now, the whole Ralph Bohner, Evan Peters thing from WandaVision might be one of the weakest elements of that show, mostly because it was kind of like this like meta red herring for the fans, because he comes back as Wanda's brother, who was Quicksilver in the Avengers movies, but played by Evan Peters, who was actually Quicksilver in the X-Men movies. When WandaVision came out, Disney had just bought Fox, and so everyone was thinking that, oh, this means that they're connecting the universes. But it turned out to be just like a meta joke about just casting in sitcoms, how they recast characters in sitcoms. And this character was just an actor called Ralph Bohner in the universe that Agatha took control of. This pretty much continues with that by making it clear that he's just Ralph Bohner. He's not meant to be a variant of Quicksilver. And I think Evan Peters here does sell the character of Ralph Bohner here. This anti-witch character, of course, because he's been traumatized by Agatha. and Wanda. Ralph Bohner has become his own character now. How he's separate from the meta joke of him being Quicksilver, you know? This now feels like a very distinct character. There was a deleted scene in WandaVision where we see the Ralph Bohner character actually cutting off his ankle tracking bracelet and escape Westview. At the end of that WandaVision, it was unclear what happened to Ralph Bohner. I think he was like an informant for the FBI too at some point. I don't know. In this episode, he makes it clear that he doesn't want to have anything to do with Westview. He lets Agatha keep his house, his Blu-ray collection, his Bowflex, all that. Doesn't want to be asked about Agatha because, you know, he just warns them, you better stay away. You know, you don't know what you're dealing with. She's a messed up witch, you know. And then here he reveals to Billy about the fact that Wanda and Vision had kids, you know, which was news to William/Billy here. He also says that he poisoned a dog. I thought it was Agatha all along who killed Sparky. That's another reveal of this episode. Of course, the main focus is the kids that Wanda and Vision made, and he tells them that they were called Billy and Tommy. And that's the info that William/Billy here needed, because now it confirms it. He realizes, oh shit, I was that kid, because he even says that, you know, Billy had mind reading powers. You know, he realizes that Wanda was his mom. And what happened to Wanda? Wanda's dead, apparently. It seems that everybody in the Marvel Universe believes that Wanda is dead. And then, you know, he pretty much gets the info he needs. You know, he's gonna, of course, go find Agatha and Evan Peters. I mean, and then Ralph Bohner here. It's like, okay, I take cash, or I'll give you half off on tickets to my show, because he has a one-man show. It looks like he's still pursuing, you know, his acting dreams. So back in his room, Billy's doing some sleuthing. He's been trying to figure out this squiggle for ages. He's seeing some stuff that we're seeing, right? He's like, oh, look, it looks like a 2, looks like an M, an N, maybe a W. I think it's just a squiggle, actually. Everything leads to Agatha. He's got to get to Agatha. And so he starts investigating on the internet, as we do. So he finds some info on Agatha. People have been talking about this witch. She survived some, you know, the Zeppelin crash. Apparently, she was seen in some surveillance footage with Dolly Parton. Could she be the Jolene in Dolly Parton's song? That song, I listened to it. Dolly Parton singing about, you know, being worried that this Jolene woman is going to take her man. You know, that's what the song's about. Jolene in that song is described as having auburn hair, you know, light skin, green eyes. And I think that describes Agatha, right? And I think so. I think that's the reality, which I think confirms that Agatha is bisexual. You know, she's had a history with Rio, of course, but also Dolly Parton's man. We get fun facts. You know, she murdered her entire coven. We know that. Has succubus powers. We know that. Nicknamed the Witch Killer. She's the only known survivor of the Witch's Road. He happens to be listening to the Witch's Road ballad. So he figures, I gotta get to this Witch's Road. That's the only way. That's how maybe he can find Tommy. I need to find Agatha, because she survived it. She could tell me how to get there. He's got a spell book so he can release Agatha from her binding spell. And he's gonna go break in. He's not being the best boyfriend here by just not even filling him Eddie in at all on what's going on. Later on, and we saw in episode 2 that he ignored his phone call. Seems to be like really in love with his boyfriend, but then ignores him and just kind of forgets about him when he gets to the Witch's Road. At least text him like, oh, I'm gonna be away for a while. I'm going on a trip with my aunt or something. I don't know. This time we get Billy's perspective of what happened in the first episode, right? We see Agatha stuck in her delusion, thinking that she's this detective. This is the scene where Rio's character comes to visit. Interesting that we don't see Rio here. I guess you could be sitting in the chair off screen. Maybe you could see Rio there if he peeked around the edge there. But later on, you know, we don't see Rio. So I suspect that Rio's only revealing herself to Agatha. This looks a little slicker in the first episode here. There's moments here where we see that Billy's like trying to help her a little bit. Oh, I just want to help you. And Agatha isn't listening really. Like, she tunes out a lot of the things that the teen is saying because she's still stuck in this delusional world, right? This is the moment where Agatha thinks she's interrogating him at the police station. We got another boner joke here. They're leading into this boner joke with her t-shirt that says Boner Family Reunion, pitch a tent, you know? Another reference to, you know, pitching a tent in bed, you know, with the sheets over the crotch region. You get it, right? You get it, right? All right. And so a lot of this dialogue is if you look back, if you compare between this and the first episode, you know, some of the dialogue overlaps, but other dialogue is different. Both Agatha and the teen's dialogue. You know, some of the stuff the teen says, Agatha doesn't even hear at all, or she reinterprets as something else, because in her head she's casting him, as the teen says, she's casting him as this mouthy teen character. He decides, okay, at this point, I better just start trying to do some magic here, get her to see reality, you know, come back into the real world. But, you know, she decides to just tie him up. I do wonder if we will see, like we saw in this episode, we saw the teen's perspective on this sequence. I do wonder if we'll see a future episode from Rio's point of view, you know. That would be kind of cool. I feel like that's where it is leading towards at some point. We get some fast forwarding here. We see the teen revealing his name. You know, in the previous episode, those are the moments where his words were hidden behind the sigil. So we're seeing this through his perspective, where he doesn't even realize the sigil's there at this point. That's a great transition back to the Witch's Road, which again is now in this wider aspect ratio, because I believe the focus again is now on Agatha. She's crawling out of the mud that she was pushed into last episode. You know, which is interesting because the same thing happened to Jen and Lilia, right? So you'd think they'd be able to crawl out at some point too, but Agatha seems to think that they're dead, you know. And now Agatha is back to her evil self. She reveals that she pretty much knew or suspected who he was since the beginning. She wasn't sure until he revealed, you know, his blue magic and all, and like pushed her into the mud. But she says that he has a tell just like Wanda. He wishes or hopes, pretends to be good, but in fact uses his powers for his own self-interest, like Wanda did in WandaVision, and how he's doing here in this show, where he, you know, pushes those witches into the mud and wants to now get to the end of the Witch's Road by himself, you know. But she's saying that, like, you know, he shouldn't feel ashamed for that power, you know. He shouldn't hold anything back. He should embrace that power. That's what witches do, and he shouldn't be ashamed of supposedly killing Lilia and Jen. You know, she says that witches have used that power to survive all these years, all these centuries. She's killed bunches of witches, you know. It doesn't hold her back, she says. You know, and so in a way, you know, she's being callous here, but she's also trying to impart some wisdom and inspiration from her perspective as the evil witch. So, you know, basically she's kind of like, hey, you think you're all goody two shoes, but really you're more like me, really, just like Wanda was, you know. You're a powerful witch, you know. Embrace it, even if it means you have to step on some people along the way. And now that's how Agatha justifies her cruelty, or, you know, her evil doings. She feels like it's the only way to survive as a witch. I think her journey is going to be like, yeah, you don't necessarily have to follow every rule, but you also have to be mindful of other witches, of other people, you know. You can't be completely self-interested. Probably leading to a moment where, like, you know, these characters are going to find out that, oh, it's best to support other witches as opposed to taking all the power for yourself. You know, that's probably what the end goal here is thematically. Now Agatha's kind of like trying to figure out, okay, what exactly does Billy want here on this road? His goal, of course, obviously is you got to find Tommy. He says he can sense him. So, you know, we can imagine that, like Billy was transported into William Kaplan's body, Tommy must have done the same in some other person's body. You know, maybe Tommy's spirit is still lost and hasn't found a host yet. Who knows? Anyway, so basically he decides that he'll work together with her to get to the end of the road, but he doesn't trust her, of course. And Agatha does a funny thing here. She puts a little strand of hair up to her lip, reminiscent of an evil mustache. To mock Billy a bit, Agatha doesn't think Billy's much different from her anyways. So it ends with them going to the next trial, and she's like, the last one there is a nice person, because being nice is actually bad, according to Agatha. But Billy here, being his moody teen self, is like, I'm not a nice person. Perhaps foreshadowing of Billy doing some not so nice things in the future here. I think he's embracing a little bit more of his evil, devilish side, right? Though he doesn't seem to be in complete control of his powers, because we do see him here getting a little bit angry and flustered, about to unleash some power, and it doesn't come out. This may be similar also to what we saw happen with Agatha last time too, because when she came out of her trial last episode, she had some of Alice's powers, right? And there was a scene where she had like a little fireball in her hand, but then it fizzled out. It's not clear whether or not she fizzled out her power, or if she wasn't able to maintain it, and she realized that maybe she too doesn't have the power she thinks. And so maybe like on the witch's road, their powers are limited or something until they get to the end. But if that's the case, she seems to be hiding it from him. She doesn't want to reveal that. But there are moments, of course, where they can unleash that power. We saw Billy do so last episode. So maybe it just requires a lot more intention, a lot more passion than they currently have at the moment. I don't know. We'll see. But that's the end of that episode. We still haven't seen Rio since she was looking down at Alice last episode, right? I suspect she will pop up sometime soon, maybe during a flashback episode to get her perspective. As for Jen and Lilia, I suspect they're still alive. They'll probably come out of that mud at some point soon, maybe next week, or they've been transported through the mud to somewhere else. Because if Agatha didn't die, then I doubt Jen and Lilia didn't die either. But yeah, I thought this was another solid episode. We filled in the blanks regarding Billy, and we also got to reveal that Lilia was the one that put the sigil there. I feel like there's still some questions there. What exactly did she see that compelled her to write down that sigil? I like seeing Ralph Bohner back. I think they did a good job of reintroducing Bohner. Really fleshed out his character more. I do wonder, though, if we're going to see his one-man show. You think we'll see Bohner's one-man show before the end of the season? So it looks like we're leading to a finale where Billy might just try to make contact with Tommy. And then probably the conundrum of having to choose the friends you made along the way versus ultimate power. For Billy's character, it could be a reversal of what Wanda did, right? Where Wanda chose the town to save the town versus her family. Perhaps now Billy's going to want to resurrect Tommy at the expense of the Coven. I don't know. That could be interesting. We still need more details on Nicholas Scratch, Agatha's son, along with Rio. That mystery's still lingering. But yeah, good stuff all around. And hopefully it keeps getting gayer too. I think there's some potential there, Good on the writers for gaying it up despite any of the pressures from Disney. Hopefully they can keep it up. But that'll do it for now. I'll see you next time under the moonlight on the Witch's Road. Bye bye.